Welcome to Spenelli Speaks. I'm Danny, and if you are new here, I hope you are going to hit that subscribe button and stick around for what's to come. Don't forget that notification bell. That'll help you see the newest videos as soon as they're posted. Today, I had the brilliant idea to rearrange my shelves. Now, typically when you see me, you can only really see this shelf and the one above, but today I want to get onto one of my goals for this year, which is to reorganize my shelves and make my guest room more of my full kind of reading area / working area, and bring all of the books that I have in my household, which I have about 4 shelves intermingled everywhere, up into this room. Now, if you can see behind me, there are a shit ton of books here. So I thought it would be fun if we go ahead and together take a look at what's on these shelves and maybe start to brainstorm of how I'm going to kind of rearrange them, organize them, put them where they belong, and in hopes of when I get my other shelves in here that I'll have more of an aesthetically pleasing library room. So let's go ahead and stick with one shelf for today because, like I said, these are so full. So we don't want to overwhelm ourselves. So I'm going to bring you in a little bit closer here and even maybe angle you down a little bit so you can see what I'm seeing. This awful shelf right here. So we're just going to go ahead and pull all these books out and see what we've got going on. Oh my lord. Oh. Okay, so how do we want to do this? Okay, so let's talk about what's on this shelf. So a lot of this shelf has a lot of the books that I have just squandered away and tried to hide. So we'll kind of go through them. What I think I'd like to do is make piles of books that I have read, books that I have not read, and then books that I may want to unhaul. Now, I will tell you right now, I do not like getting rid of books. It's one of my biggest pet peeves when people try to tell me to get rid of books. They're mine, 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 mine. I buy them for a reason. However, I will say if a book was really bad, why am I keeping it? If I didn't like it, why am I keeping it on the shelf? So I will say maybe as one of my goals was to try to unhaul, I will get rid of any books that maybe I disliked a lot. So let's get right on into it. I don't know what pile to pick from first, so I'll just kind of start right here. But I have Adrienne Rich's Poetry and Prose. So this book I had to purchase for one of my master's classes this past semester, actually, the last semester. So I have not read all of this. It's more so a couple here and there, whatever we were assigned to read. So I would like at some point to really dig into that. I will tell you, I do not like poetry. I have a really hard time following poetry. I have a very good friend from my program who, his final project, his capstone, was in poetry. And anytime I would ever give him any, criticism or compliment, I would always say, take this with a grain of salt because I really have no idea about poetry. So this is going to go into I'm going to put it into a have not read pile. And even so, maybe even an academic pile because it's not really a book that I would go to because I want to read it. It's more so because it was assigned to me. Breakfast at Tiffany's. This is by Truman Capote, and I have not read this book, and I want to read this book. I love the movie with Audrey Hepburn, and I used to watch it so often as a child. I picked this up in one of my book hauls, and I am really excited. I do really want to read this, so I'm going to put this in a to be read pile. I also have the 100-Year-Old Man Who Climbed Out the Window and Disappeared. This I picked up at one of my library book hauls. This is from a local library here, and I do really want to read this one. I think this one's going to be good. I've heard about it a couple of times, and I can't remember by whom, but I am really excited. I would really like to read this, so that's going to be in my to be read pile. I have a feeling that one's going to get really big. Then I have The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, and you can see that this one is quite large. It's not a big book, but this is an academic style book, so it has a lot of essays and criticism there. I have read this book. I had to read it for an American literature book. This is definitely a classic. I highly recommend it. More so, not for leisure reading. I would more recommend it for academic reading because it has a lot of substance in it that goes along with the time. And I highly recommend reading these kinds of books with the essays that go along because it really opens your mind to what the story meant at the time and what the story means to us now. So this is going to go into, maybe I'm going to create that as an academic pile. So that'll go with my poetry book there. Ooh, The Lincoln Lawyer. So I picked this up in one of my hauls. You may have seen that recently. I do want to read this. It's interesting. I think they made a book about it. This is a Michael Connelly novel. I think I picked it up. Yeah, it looks like at Bethesda for 99 cents. So I'll put this in a to be read pile. Maybe I should make two to be read piles. Maybe one is classics and one is more contemporary. So I'll put that over here. Okay. Ooh, Little Bee. So this I have not read either. I picked this up at one of my hauls, 79 cents at Goodwill. Mint condition. So excited to read that. So yeah, to be read. Ooh, this one I picked up for my fiance, so it actually shouldn't be on my shelf, but The Pursuit of Happiness, the life and story that inspired a motion picture. If you've seen that with Will Smith, and his son actually plays his son in that movie, that is something that is for my fiance, so I need to get it out of here altogether. Oh, Ernest Hemingway, The Old Man and the Sea. I have not read this. I don't know why. It's never come up in one of my American literature courses, so I have not read this. And in all actuality, I don't recall if I've read any Ernest Hemingway. I'll have to think about that. I'm not sure. So this is going to go in my to be read pile for classics. Big Little Lies. Okay, so this I picked up in one of my hauls, and I'm not quite sure if I will read it or if I'm going to give it to my mother. She watches the show. It's on HBO, and she really loves the show, and I think that's why I picked up the book, to see if the book was any good. I believe Reese Witherspoon, Nicole Kidman, and a few others are in that show. So I'll go ahead and put this in my to be read pile for contemporary, and I can see here on the back it says there's a reader's guide inside. I love that because sometimes I'll read those questions beforehand, and then so when I'm reading the book, things may click a little bit differently. So I'll put that in my to be read. I have a lot of to be read. That's not good, guys. The Last Lecture. I picked this up in one of my hauls as well. I really want to read this one. If you recall, I kept confusing this and The Secret as one book. So this one's a little bit of a smaller one, so that'll be easier to get through. And I'll put this in the contemporary pile. Oh, The Devil Wears Prada. Yes, I got this in one of my hauls as well. I think that I really, really loved the movie for this, so I really kind of wanted to see if the book was better. I'm going to put this in my to be read contemporary pile. Ooh, yes, another one. I must have just put all these books that I had in my haul in one big pile on my shelf. So this is Stephen Fry, The Liar. If you know who Stephen Fry is, he is a comedian. He is from the UK. He does a lot of different things. He does some stand-up as far as, not so much stand-up like you would know for the American style, but he talks about life and kind of in a lecture style. He's a very intelligent individual. He was on that show Jeeves and Wooster. He was in V for Vendetta. And not that that was a funny role. He does some that are more serious as well. But I saw this and picked it up. Thought it would be a good read. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in my to be read contemporary pile. Ooh, yes. Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. So I picked this up in that same haul, and I would like to read this. I really liked the movie, and actually my book club this year, this comes up in one of the months because I added it in there, and I think we're reading this in maybe the middle of the year, maybe July or something like that. So this is going to be on my book club. So I'm going to put this in a separate pile so that I don't lose it. I'm going to put this in my book club pile. The Handmaid's Tale. I don't know if I'm going to read this. I bought it because it was at Goodwill for 79 cents, so I figure I might as well pick it up. If it's under $1, and I think at some point in time I'm going to read it, I may do that. So I'll put this in my to be read contemporary pile, but I don't know if I will ever actually read it. I just have a feeling that it's not my cup of tea. I have read Margaret Atwood before. I've read her Oryx and Crake, which a lot of people really enjoy. I think it's on Spinster's library. She really likes Oryx and Crake, and she's continuing on in the series because it's a series, that one. But I did not like Oryx and Crake, so I might not read this. So we'll see. I might unhaul it at some point, but we'll put it in the to be read pile. Ooh, Bridges of Madison County. So this is also made into a movie with Clint Eastwood, I believe, and I don't know where I got it. I may have picked it up randomly on a random book haul, but I know that my mom really liked the movie, so I thought it would be interesting to maybe read the book. It is very short. It's a love story, and it's an older one. Let me see if I can tell you here. It's copyright first printing 1992. So several years old, but it's a short read. It has little pictures here and there. I thought it would be interesting, something cute and simple. So I may read that sometime soon. So we'll put that in that to be read. Crying of Lot 49. Okay, so I was supposed to read this in one of my classes during my undergraduate degree. I can tell you, I probably did not read this. I can't recall a darn thing about this book. Oh, I wrote in it clearly. What did I write? Let's see here. I hate writing in books, but when I was taking classes as an undergraduate, I thought myself very smart, so I would write in my books, and now I'm just appalled by what I've written. But this says plot and conspiracy. Clearly that means something. So I don't recall anything about this book. I'm not quite sure which class I was supposed to read it for. On the back it just says the highly original satire about Oedipa Maas, a woman who finds herself enmeshed in a worldwide conspiracy, meets some extremely interesting characters, and attains a not inconsiderable amount of self-knowledge. That's all it says, so I really don't know what this is about. But now I'm kind of intrigued because it kind of looks like I may have started it, but did not finish it because I couldn't tell you one thing about it. So needless to say, we're going to put that in the to be read contemporary file. Oh my Christmas! It's Pile! Okay, so Louise Erdrich. Love this author. She is one of my favorite authors. She is a Native American author who writes about a Native American family. Many of her books, they intertwine the timeline, or they intertwine the family tree. So you have recurring characters at different points of their life. So sometimes you'll read about a character when they're a teenager, and then in another book you may read about them as an old person. So it's really intriguing because I love that. Similar to like a series where you're reading about a character, kind of developing. This one really, you have snippets of characters within their whole life, which is amazing. So Four Souls is one of the books that I have not read from her. It is a smaller one. I did want to read it in my book club a couple times, but we ended up not picking this one. So I would like to read this one again, and seeing as it's used, I was probably supposed to read this in one of my classes and did not. I did read the her other one, which is called Love Medicine. And that one I enjoyed. And it looks like I underlined stuff. That can't be my handwriting, though. So I would like to read this because I do love her writing. It's spot on. I love her story telling. So I would really like to read that one. That's going to go in my contemporary pile. Okay, that was one pile. I'm on to the next. Get it closer here. So, 13 Ways of Looking at a Fat Girl by Mona Awad. I did not like this book at all. I would say I would probably give this a 1 or maybe a 2, probably a 1. This book was chosen in my book club, and yes, I did recommend my book club to read this because of the synopsis at the time, and it had been awarded something, I want to say, but in reading it, I was very disappointed. I did not like this book, and I'll tell you why. One, the main character is so incredibly needy and just whines and doesn't take any responsibility for herself. She's clearly got issues as far as body image and all that. She fluctuates throughout her life. There are 13 stories in this book that all have one central character at different parts of her life. What we did not know as a book club going into this book is this is actually a compilation of short stories. So this book was not written, as any other book would be, where you're intending for each, section to totally link to one another. She had written these short stories within, a magazine like that, and then compiled them into one book. Ugh. I did not like this. It was very annoying. I would say if you were to have read them as short stories, it would have been a lot better because you would have only had to deal with this character in short snippets and been done with it. However, when you read it, and it's not that big of a book, the character is so annoying and so self-harming. And you want to feel for her. You want to, be there for her. You want to relate to her with your own self-image issues. But she's just so, I did not like her at all. I'm going to stop talking about it. And I'm going to put this in an unhaul pile. I don't think I need it on my shelf anymore. So we're going to put that over there. Oh, The Knitting Circle. So this is a book by Anne Hood. We read this in my book club as well. I really liked this book. It's about a woman who has just recently suffered a loss, and through kind of coming to terms with it, her mother suggests that maybe she find some new friends, maybe she start knitting, and she actually introduces her to a friend of hers that had helped her at some point in her life. You find later on that her mother took up knitting to help with her own alcoholism. And in this story, you learn a lot about love, you learn a lot about friendship, you learn a lot about family, and a lot of the characters in the book are very interesting. You get to learn more about them, and there's a lot of areas in this book that are relatable to, most people, so I really like that. I don't think I rated this on Goodreads at all because we read this quite a while ago, but this one was really good. I can go ahead and put this in a red pile. Number 1. Oh, guys. Oh. I reviewed this. I'll link the video ahead, but Heather Woodhaven's Christmas with Book Club. I did not like this book. I felt like it was very ridiculous because had I realized it was like a second to an original novel where you're expected to have already known all the characters, I probably wouldn't have picked it up and read it. But I didn't feel like the story was very well developed. I didn't feel like the characters were well developed. I felt like there were too many characters. This one as well, I think I gave it a 2 on Goodreads. I don't think I would ever read this again. So, hey, I'm going to unhaul this. 2 in the unhaul pile. Okay, The Alchemist. You saw this was one of the very first books that I did in one of my BookTube videos. Highly anticipated and ended up only giving it a 3. However, I do believe this is a good book. I do believe if I were to come back to it at a different part of my life, I would have different feelings towards it. My fiance also expressed interest in reading it himself, so I'm going to go ahead and keep this one. I'm going to put that in the red pile. Ooh, this one's a good one. The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon. I really like this book. So this is about a young boy who is autistic, and he is very observant about the world around him, and he expresses that world to you as the narrator. He goes on a quest to find his father. So we see how that happens. And then he is constantly talking about this incident about a dog in the nighttime. And you find out what happens. And it's very interesting. I really liked it. Definitely a keeper. I'm going to put this in my red pile. The Secret. Okay, so this is the one that goes along with that lecture, the last lecture. I have not read this book, but want to, and I'm going to put that in my to-be-read contemporary pile. That pile is getting very, very big. Here's another one, Amy Tan. I got this in one of my book hauls. I've heard so many good things about Amy Tan. Really want to get into it. This one's called The 100 Secret Senses. I heard a lot of good things. Even when I picked it up at that library book haul or book sale, the person checked me out, was like, oh yes, this one's really good. So I'm looking forward to reading that. We're going to put that in the to-be-read. War Brides. Again, from that same haul at the library. This one's a bit of a chunker. Talks about brides in the World War I or II era and how they contributed to that time. I want to say they made a movie out of this, but I'm not quite sure. But this is a Helen Bryan book, so interested in that. Going to put that in that same pile. The Geographer's Library, again, same haul, so I'm feeling that we've gotten through some of those there, and anticipated reading this soon, as it is pretty interesting. It is about a death that happens, and somehow it has traced back 9,000 years, so it's kind of like a historical fiction, which I love. So I'll be putting that in my to-be-read contemporary pile. Ooh, Mitch Albom, one of my favorite authors. This one's The 5 People You Meet in Heaven. Absolutely love these books. This one was very good. It's about a man who passes within the first couple pages of the book, and we follow him through heaven and the 5 people that he meets. There's a lot of interconnecting, and I would say no matter what you believe happens after death, it doesn't offend anybody in any way. This book, it's just one person's version of what may or may not happen, and it's very short read, so it's something you can get done pretty quickly. I think I read it on the way to Ohio for my graduation, but this one's very, very good. This is going to go into my red pile, and typically I keep Mitch Albom's books in my bedroom, where I have a shelf of books that I consider books that I really enjoyed. So I'll put that in my red pile. Trevor Noah's Born a Crime. This is a book that we read in my book club and really loved it. It's about his experience living in South Africa and how he kind of went through the stages of, being not black and not white, but being kind of in between. And at that time, that was a crime in South Africa. So, experiencing how, being in the shadows and, getting to know other people who may be similar, and then his mother, who was a big influence of his life. So very, very good book. Definitely something I would recommend. This is going to be in the red pile. A Man Called Ove by Frederick Backman. This is another book that I read in my book club. We all really loved it. It goes pretty quickly if you like contemporary fiction. The main character is kind of a sarcastic, kind of bitter curmudgeon kind of guy, and he kind of is done. He's ready to move on. He tries a couple of times in this book to commit suicide, and for one reason or another it doesn't work out, and he meets a new friend, really, who is a new neighbor, and it kind of goes through their relationship and coming to terms with his new purpose for living. So that is a man called Uwe. Very, very good. I would highly recommend that. It's going in my read pile. The Book of Life by Deborah Harkness. This is the third installment of her All Souls trilogy. And there's actually another book that came off of this called The Times Convert, which I would like to read. I tried to start reading it a couple months ago and then just got off track. But really, really love these books. They just made a new series on AMC, BBC, whatever. They're all interconnected. But by the same title, which is of the first book, which is A Discovery of Witches. And that did quite well. They're working on the second season right now. Loved these books. So that is something I would definitely recommend. They are chunkers, so you do have some time there. What I love about Deborah Harkness is the amount of time she spends developing the scene. The second novel, they are in 15th century or 16th century England, and she really does just develop such a setting there, which I love. So love those books. That's going to go in the red pile. The Help. This is a book that I've read at least twice now. Once on my own when it first came out, and then again with my book club. This is a very good book. I noticed that I liked it less the second time I read it, which is interesting. I think, though, when you reread a book, after the hype is gone, you begin to see its faults, or you begin to compare it to other books that may be similar. So, though I do recommend this book, I did feel differently about it the second time around. So this is going to go in my red pile. Okay, but looking okay. So we're back to more piles. Okay. The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. I had to read this in an American literature course, as you can imagine. And this, like the Huckleberry Finn, is academic style book. So it has a lot of essays in it, a lot of explanation, a lot of information about the times. And the actual book is much, it's not long at all. If we look at, I've written all up in this one. Whoo! Why would I do that? It's really written in, guys. Oh my gosh. How awful. Anywho, I did like this one. I think when you come to reading classic literature, the language that they use, the style of writing that they use is so much different than now, that by having a book that has the explanations, the footnotes, the essays that go along, you're really able to understand what the author's time, what they do in that time, what they understand, and what the words mean. I think nowadays we take that for granted in the classics, and I think that's sometimes what tears people away from reading classics, is a lot of the language is so different from what they're used to that they stray away from it. And I say, grab one that has the essays, grab one that has the footnotes. Don't go to your Dover Swifts that are, this tiny, have no explanation whatsoever. Grab one that has the essays, grab one that has footnotes. By having those prologues and kind of introductions, especially the introductions, you get a scope of what are we reading, what happened during this time era, who are these people? So it makes a lot more sense. So Scarlet Letter was very good. This is going to go on my red pile, but I'm going to make a different pile. I'm going to make a red academic, a red classics pile. Maybe I should put Huckleberry Finn in there too. Okay. Adjustments can be made, people. Okay. So red classics. Very good. Here's one that I had to read for a short story class, The Best American Short Stories. These are sold, in any of your, like your Barnes and Nobles, that kind of thing. And they have them, this one is for 2015. They do them every year. So this is basically a bunch of American writers. These are all short stories. I'm going to go ahead and just put this in my academic pile. I have 2 more from my classes, so these are for writing. So when I took a creative writing course, we have here master plots and master characters. So what these books have are some of your most popular characters, most popular kind of plots. I recommend, if you are out there as a reader and you are wondering, man, this is the same kind of plot I read in this book, or this is the same kind of character I read in this book. It's like that for a reason. There are certain ways in which writers write, and there are certain paths they all take, because there are only so many kinds of plots and only so many kinds of characters that you can actually create. I mean, we all think we're being creative and we all think we're being different. And we all think that we can create something that's new. However, there is a basis for everything. There are certain, trees that we follow, that we go along. There's patterns that we see. And I would highly recommend, if you really want to know about these kinds of things, go to your local, Amazon. That's not local, but Amazon will have them. Look up these kinds of books, because you'll be able to see where all this stuff comes from and how those characters are meant to develop. So when I took this class and had these books, I was like, I didn't even think of anything like that. It tells you about the modern love story and how it's supposed to work. It tells you about the villain versus the hero. And so it helps you kind of discover, like, okay, once I figure out who the characters are in the book, I have a better understanding of how they're going to develop. So those were academic, and put that in the academic pile. Modernism, that was for a modernism course. Basically gives you history about that era. It has specific people, specific places, specific artifacts. Very academic. The Great Gatsby, one of my favorite books. It's by F. Scott Fitzgerald. This is definitely going into my read classics pile. I read this back in high school and adored it. And even then, knowing that I didn't really understand a lot of what was happening, just loved it. I've read it since. It's something that I just adore. So that's going to go on my read classics pile. Here I have writing about world literature. I will tell you right now, I never even touched this book in my class. I have no idea why we even needed it. We never were assigned to read it. To be perfectly honest, I don't think I need this book. I don't think I'll ever touch it. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in my unhaul pile. Just going to break away. Okay, so you hear me talk about these Dover Thrift, and I think I called it Dover Shift. I don't know. Dover Thrift. Okay, here I have the Turn of the Screw. You can see that it's super tiny. I bet this book, ew. Yuck, I don't know what that was. Okay, so on the back, you can see super cheap, guys. So you're at your Barnes and Noble, you're at your bookstore where you're trying to find books, and you're thinking, I've got a deal. Clearly, Danny thought she had a deal when she bought all these books, going, oh, look, I can buy these books. They're classics. Romeo and Juliet, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Utopia, The Turn of the Screw. So, all $1, $1.50, $1.50. You're thinking you have a good deal. Guess what, guys? These are all classics. These are books that you need help reading. Like I mentioned before, an essay or footnotes. These have none of them. So, when I had to go and take an undergraduate class for Turn of the Screw, which is one of the most craziest stories ever, instead of buying the correct copy right away, that has the footnotes, the essays, the understanding, the what does that even mean? I bought the Dover Thrift and had no clue what we were talking about, and it pissed me off, let me tell you. So I bit the bullet and bought the actual course edition, what that was requested, so I could actually understand what everything was saying. So needless to say, now I have 2 Turn of the Screws. This one being much better because I can understand what the hell is happening. That being said, if you like weird stories about a governess and some kids, and don't get this confused with the Turn of the Key, which sounds very familiar. Turn of the Key is new this year. It was made into a movie now. Not this story. Not this story at all. At first I thought it was, and then I looked more into it. It's not. It's a completely different book. But Turn of a Screw is very interesting. It's about a governess with 2 children, and there is a kind of... You think that there's a ghost or something. You think there's some kind of spiritual entity, and you don't quite figure it out. It's very crazy. It's a very weird story. I did enjoy it. I thought it was interesting, but I would recommend reading it with some help. So Dover Thrift can suck it. It wasn't good. We'll put this in my academic pile, and sorry dude, but I'm going to put this in my unhaul pile. Now, to say, though, I have these 3 here. I do not have these books anywhere else. I would like to read them. Now being an adult and being a little bit more wise, and with the beautiful technology we have with our, internet nowadays, I could certainly look up a few notes here and there. I will go ahead and keep these. I'll put these in my... Now I have read Romeo and Juliet. I will put that in the read classics. I have not, though, read Utopia and The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So that'll go in my to-be-read classics pile. Here is another one. So this is Susan Sontag's Style of Radical Will. I had this for a class. I can tell you, I don't remember why. I don't think I read it. I don't think I will read it. Oh, it was probably for my aesthetics class, because I can see here the first section says the aesthetics of silence. I'm not going to read this book. I'm going to unhaul this. I'm going to get rid of it, guys. Look at me being awesome unhauling stuff. Another one, Modernism. Used this for my modernism class. Used it a lot, by Peter Childs. This one is actually excellent. I really enjoyed his book in here. You can see I've highlighted so much in here. I use this for many, many, many papers, not only in my modernism class, but also outside my modernism class. If you know anything about modernism, it is basically the years after the World Wars, where everything just exploded with industrialism, as well as art and film and writing and all of that. It's a brilliant time to jump in. Many of your classics come from this time. A lot of classics come from before it, but a lot of the modern classics come from this time. Love, love, love Peter Childs' work. He makes it very understandable. It's not that big of a book. Love this. So I'm going to keep this in my academic pile. Wow, I have a feeling that this is a very, very long video, but we have so much more here. I'm gonna blow through these next ones because these are definitely academics. So this is the Art and Craft of Short Story. I will keep this because, someday I do want to continue writing, so I'll just keep this in my academic pile. Moby Dick. This is a edited version, so this will have the book as well as essays in it. I have not finished Moby Dick. I was supposed to read this for a undergraduate course and just decided not to finish it because, as you all know, Moby Dick is a huge book. It's ridiculously long, and it's not the easiest to read. So call me Ishmael, but I gotta pause on that a little bit. So I'm going to put this in my to-be-read classics section. And then these guys are all academics. I'm not even going to explain. So this is all from my British course. So these are the Longman Anthology of British Literature. So these books are some hefty babies. So those I had to read for my British literature course, and I'm keeping them because I love Brit Lit. So that's going to go in my academic pile. Then we have my world literature. course books. I'll keep those because that's what I do. Ulysses by James Joyce. This one, again, edited version, so they have not only Ulysses, but then some essays and understanding in the back. I really liked Ulysses. So Ulysses is a story that he adapted from Odysseus, the Odyssey. So his character, I can't remember his name now, but is supposed to be like Odysseus and his travels, his quest, but it's in modern, it's modern day Ireland. It's about him and his wife, and it's funny, when I went to Ireland and we were in this one museum, the tour guide and maybe even curator of that particular museum, we were in the very beginning, and there was a copy of Ulysses open in this cabinet, and he showed it to us and very comically was like, has anybody read that? And I was the only person that raised my hand, and he's like, look, the one American in the room's read Ulysses. So it was kind of funny. I guess you had to be there, I don't know, but this one, very good. I enjoyed that very much. It's broken up in the sections just like it was in the Odyssey, and I thought was good. One of my favorite Joyce novels. I did like A Portrait of a Young Man, and I don't remember his other one, The Dubliners, I think. I have not yet read, but Ulysses was pretty good. I'm going to put this in my read classics pile. Ooh, okay, so this book, so this is my world mythology book by Donna Rosenberg. I bought this book when I was a teenager, guys. I really liked mythology, and for some reason or another, I, in my own head, was like, I want to learn more about mythology, and I'm going to be super smart about mythology, and so I'm going to read this book. I have never actually been able to get through this book. So maybe that's a goal of mine, but I've had this book. This is one of the books that I have had for the longest, it's gotta be, so I brought this with me to college, so that was in 2004, so if you do the math, I've had this book for 16 years, and I will probably never get rid of it. So that's world mythology. Where should I put that, though? I don't really call it an academic, because I bought it on its own. I'll just have to put it in my to be read, I guess. And then this guy is from, ooh, that's not good. Woo. My American literature book. This is from my undergrad, so that has a lot of good stuff in it. So we'll be keeping that one. Oh my gosh, guys, I only have one more pile. One more pile. Ooh. Okay. These are going to be a lot of classics. Okay, so we have The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. If you have ever heard of this book, it's about the meat industry. Have not yet read it. Never had to read it for a class, but I would like to, so that's going to go on my classics to be read. Ooh, so this one's The Portable Dante. So this has Dante's oh man! I was using a rebate to Fashion Bug for a bookmark. So now you know how old this is, because Fashion Bug does not exist. Dang it, man. $10. Anywho, so if you've ever read The Divine Comedy, you know that it's about transcending into heaven, but starting in the pits of hell and the 7 different layers. And so as my final, as an undergraduate, I took a class that was all this. It was just this book, and we dove so far into it. I would say it was one of my favorite classes. It was really good. I really, really enjoyed it. And I think for my final project, I actually wrote a short story about that. Oh, I really liked it. So this is going to go in my read classics. We have North and South I think I was supposed to read this for one of my classes, and you keep hearing me say this, like, how, Danny, how did you get past your classes without actually reading the material? Well, guys, very carefully. Anywho, I have not read this, but I started to watch the miniseries that is on Netflix, which I believe was a BBC miniseries, and I did really enjoy the characters there. So I'm going to have to pick this one up again. I'm going to put this in my to-be-read classics. Ooh. Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway. So this is only one of the couple of versions I have of this. I know I have another one. Here's one. That I have, and I know I think I have a third somewhere. So I have two versions, and I know I should probably throw one out, but I just can't. This one is so pretty, like, it's so nice. And then this one I had to get for a class, and if you know anything about when you're in a class, when they tell you to get a certain version of the book, it's pretty much, there's a reason why. There's either an essay involved in there, or they want you to read the introduction, or you're staying on top of the pages of how they are. So I did get that version. So I have two here, and I swear, guys, I probably have another one somewhere. So I might have actually 3 versions of this book. And I'll tell you, I'll keep them because I really love Virginia Woolf. I actually ended up writing a huge paper on her in my during my master's degree. I think in my modernism class, and then again I wrote a little bit about her in my final capstone. But I really like her writing. Her actual life story is so interesting. It's one of those that you just, it's unfathomable. You know, you find out that, you know, she may have had some kind of like bipolar or schizophrenia. You also find out that she was more than likely either bisexual or completely, you know, lesbian. She had, you know, female lovers, but in that time, I mean, it was unheard of. And she was married. And she did love her husband, and I think more as a companion than anything else. He really did care for her and take care of her. Even published all of her books as their own publishing company. But really liked Mrs. Dalloway. Mrs. Dalloway is about a woman who's hosting a party. There's also a storyline that follows one of her lovers, as well as a soldier who's come back from the war, who's dealing with PTSD, which is not even called that yet. So she brings to light something that hasn't even been, you know, discovered in a certain sense. So it's very much before her time. Really, really love these books. Put this in my classics pile. Oh, A Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. As you can see, this is like in mint condition, hasn't even been touched. So I probably bought this at some point saying, hey, I need to buy this book because it's a classic and I need to read it. So it'll go into my to-be-read classics pile. Macbeth. So I don't think I've read this. I know the story. Most of us know the story. Have not read it. To-be-read classics pile. Ooh, this one. So this is a little larger than the entire universe. It's selected poems by this Fernando Pessoa. I had to read this for a class. I don't like poetry, guys. It's just not my thing. This is very artistic poetry. It's very different kind of poetry. I'm kind of on the fence if I really want to keep this book. I'm going to put it in my unhaul pile and see if it comes back filtered through. This book, She, it's called, by H. Rider Haggard, whatever. I had to read this for a course. I didn't read it. I don't feel like I probably will. I don't really know what it's about. I'm going to put it in my unhaul. You guys, I'm doing so good on unhauling. Here's my copy of Wuthering Heights. I have not read Wuthering Heights. This is a Bronte, Emily Bronte novel, and so this one is nice because it's going to have all of your essays and your introductions and your information about that. I have not yet read it, and I think I have a different version of this. Yep, I have one right here. So I have a little signet classics of it as well. And you know what? There's a bookmark in here, so I must have started it at some point. But those I have not. And between the two guys, I like this cover a lot more than this cover. But I hate to give either of them away, so that'll go into my to-be-read classics pile. James Joyce, A Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man. I think I said that earlier. This is actually very good. It follows a man who is kind of coming to age and what that means to him and what that means to his life and how he wants to pick, or choose really what path he's going to take in life. It's, in Ireland, where Joyce is from, so you see that as a background piece of it as well. The setting plays a big part of his, life and where he's going, and it's very, very good. So this one is Read Classics. Oh, I love this book. This is, you can see I had to read it for a class. This is The Red Badge of Courage by Stephen Crane. It's about a young man who is in war, and I believe it's the Civil War. Yes, the Civil War, and his grappling with fear of dying and fear of deserting. Deserting is taken very seriously in any war, but most certainly in these wars, a Civil War especially, a deserter, you were sentenced to death. So this was very, very good. I love this book. I wouldn't think I would like wartime novels or novels about war, but this one is so character oriented that you completely forget that you're reading about war. It's so character driven. So very, very good. That's going to go in my Read Classics pile. Heart of Darkness. I do have two versions of this book because I bought this one very early on as a young person out of school, because what I would do is I would go to the bookstore, and when I would find something that was deemed like, oh, that's a classic, I should buy that because I should know about that, I would just pick it up if it was a good deal. So I had bought that, and then later on in life I ended up having to purchase this one for a class. Very interesting book. It's about a man who is in Africa, and they're like, I think they're trying to, there's some kind of product that they're getting, and it really dives real deep into the slavery issue and human versus a product, and it's very, very dark. The writing is very interesting. I definitely recommend having some kind of help, like at these essays and whatnot with it. So that's going to go into my Read Classics. And I'm going to go ahead and unhaul this one because I don't need it. The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot. I did not like this. I had to read this for a class. Did not like it at all. So if you know anything about T.S. Eliot, and this was part of my modernism class, T.S. Eliot is he thinks very highly of himself. He thinks he is so smart, and not that he isn't. He is a very smart person, but what ends up happening is, in The Wasteland, he basically purposely writes this for only educated people. He specifically writes this long poem-like thing to see who will understand what I'm talking about. Dickhead. So anywho, I had to read this for a class. I will keep it because it is part of our history, but damn, this guy pissed me off. Next on, Virginia Woolf. I love Virginia Woolf. I have not yet read A Room of One's Own, but I've heard very, very good things about that, so I would like to read that. I'm going to put this in my to-be-read classics pile. Ooh, yeah. Now I have my last book of my shelf, which is Dracula. And as you can see, I've got three versions of Dracula. So I have Dracula here, which I had to pick up for a class in my undergraduate. So this is going to have essays and understanding. So I really like that. This is just Dracula that I picked up at Barnes & Noble one year because I wanted to have it again. And then this one is an illustrated version of Dracula. So the illustrations are like almost, if I can find some for you, they're very like comic booky, which is very, very interesting. So I just missed another one. So they're very, very dark. So I really liked that. And I don't remember where I found this. It's been a very, very long while since I have looked at this. But they're just, I mean, look at, ooh, it's scary. But I love Dracula. I had to read it for a class with one of my favorite professors. Ooh, this one's really nice. So this must be Mina. And fell in love with the story. I know some people think that the ending's a little lackluster, but it's definitely a classic that you need to read. I'm keeping these because I can, and you can't make me get rid of them, so that's going to go on my classics to be read, or classics read pile. So if y'all come on with me, you can see I've made piles here. So we have my classics read. This is my contemporary read. This is my classics to be read, my contemporary to be read, my academic piles here. I think you're probably too close there. And now, an empty shelf. So I'm going to go ahead and keep those to myself for now, and we will get back to them at some point to reorganize them. I don't know if I'm going to do the whole color thing that everyone does, but that might be interesting. I don't know if I probably won't take them off of this shelf for now until I get my other shelves in here. So I'll probably just put these right back on here for now. But at least I have them organized and in a way that I want to expand them out. I also have a good pile of unhaul. Look at that. I've never gotten rid of books before, but look at this. That's a good first step, Danny. Pretty darn good. Pretty darn good. Until next time, guys, I know that was a long video, but it was a lot of books, and that was only one shelf. So I'm hoping to get better. I'm hoping to have a little more organization. I hope that you've hit the subscribe button. I hope you're still here, and if you are a freaking rock star. Go ahead and hit the like button. Comment below, have you read any of these books? Have you have any comments about any of these books? I'd love to hear it. I'd love to come in and comment and have a conversation. So until next time, guys, happy reading. Bye!